Hello, everyone, and welcome to this LinkedIn Live. I am here with a fantastic guest today. His name is Ethan Evans, and I'm so thrilled to be having this conversation. We are going to be talking about how to move from manager to a leader and have that je ne sais quoi in the spirit of the Paris Olympics. Let's put some je ne sais quoi into this conversation and have that really inspirational leader sort of experience that we're looking from the leaders that we're looking up to. So really thrilled. It's a topic that I think everyone would be interested in if you want to be moving from where you are in your existing career, or if you want to be moving to a different company, or if you want to just know how to be more inspirational, be more agile, be more employee experience focused. And we're going to get all of the little tips and tricks and hacks from Ethan. So I'm really interested in what he has to say, and I'm really looking forward to learning from Ethan. If you haven't come across me before, my name is Christina. I'm really thrilled to have you here. I love talking about change because change happens to all of us, whether it's in an organizational change perspective or in a business transformation context or in a personal context. So I love talking about all of it. I've been in management consulting and industry for over 20 years, doing all sorts of different transformational programs. And I love educating people about what change is and how to go about asking the right change questions so we can get the right change outcomes. Now, I wanted to give the stage to Ethan to introduce himself. But before that, I'll just mention a few of his really highlights. He has spent 15 plus years at Amazon. He has led global teams of 800 plus people. He has invented well-known products such as Prime Video, Prime Gaming, and the Amazon App Store. So, Ethan, without further ado, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here. Please give us a little bit of a spiel of who you are and what motivates you.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, a spiel, that word can be negative. I don't want to do that in that sense, but I guess the rest of my background, I began as an engineer and I spent 12 years in startups. And then Amazon called me in 2005. So I have startup experience and I had led teams of different functions, including engineering, some other stuff, up to about 30 people. I got called to Amazon. Came in as a senior manager, started a small team that began Prime Video, then did all the things you said at Amazon, stayed there 15 years, left in the fall of 2020, so almost 4 years ago, during COVID. And I left to focus on teaching basically the next generation of leaders. I was doing a lot of that within Amazon. But it turns out running a big Amazon business and a team of hundreds at Amazon takes a lot of time.
Yeah, right.
I realized that was like limiting my ability to teach, to write, to speak, and to share on LinkedIn and in my newsletter, things like that. And so I left to do that. I now split my time between traveling, enjoying my life, and writing on LinkedIn, teaching classes.
Fantastic.
So that's my background and I love it. And the specific reason is so many people are unhappy with their careers. And we spend so much time in our lives at work that it just seems, I wish I was like a Mother Teresa type who could work on maybe, solving world hunger or something. That's not my gift. But what I can do is help people enjoy their work and feel more satisfied. And given how many people are unhappy with their work, I feel like I'm still doing a huge amount of good if I can put smiles on people's faces and help them love all those years that we're all going to spend in the office.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the amount of time that we spend at work is enormous. So if we can, if you with your teachings can elevate people to enjoy, love, and absolutely, be in love with the future that they've got shaped for themselves, then that's a huge win. Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you guys if you're joining us live. We are here talking to Ethan Evans. Ethan is an ex-Amazon vice president who is now retired and is an executive coach and teaches people about moving from manager to an executive. We'd love to hear where you are joining us from. So please put in the chat, say hello. And also would love to hear your challenges and perspectives and questions for Ethan or for me. So please share those. This is supposed to be an interactive discussion, and Ethan loves getting different questions and challenging questions. So please don't hide behind the chat. Be as active as you can. Ethan, you mentioned you are retired, and I suppose you're quite comfortably retired. Why are you still doing what you're doing? Why are you still writing newsletters? Why are you so active on LinkedIn? My goodness, you're active on LinkedIn. I follow you very closely, and I love every day you post something, and it's not just a insy wincy post. It's quite a chunky, meaty, substance, content driven post. Why are you doing it?
Yeah. Well, I do it for a couple reasons. One is I love it. It gives me joy every day. Every single day, I am lucky enough to get at least one message from someone that says how I helped them.
Yeah.
So, I don't do it strictly for that, but it is an amazing endorphin drip, to have people I don't necessarily know say, wow, what you wrote really helped me or really resonated with me, or I made this change, or now I understand something. So one thing is, of course, to see that you're having an impact. The second, I usually quote a Bible verse that says, to whom much has been given, from them much will be required. And I look at that as I was very lucky. I never expected to do as well as I did. I had a great career. I was able to step away from Amazon when I was 50 years old, which is, maybe older than some people would want to retire, but a hell of a lot younger than most.
Right.
And so I feel like to just, sort of sit around and not contribute to society would be pretty sad. So I also see it as a duty. But the good thing is it's not a painful duty.
Yeah.
And so those are the two reasons is I really like to help people and see them thrive. And I feel like it is my responsibility to help. There's this idea of when you have climbed the ladder, don't just pull it up after you. Instead, reach a hand down and help the next person up.
Yeah. I love that.
And I look at it also, our world has enough problems that it needs lots of leaders. Sometimes when I talk about problems, people hear different political problems, but you can kind of pick your flavor of problem, whether it's different social justice things or climate or all the conflicts around the world. There's just lots of things that could use smart help. And so I'm trying to put people in places where they can help with those things.
There's and I suppose there's so much expectations around what leaders need to be, and if you can help people along that journey with setting them up with the right expectations for their own leadership journey, then that helps us bridge that gap, because I suppose we see that gap between my leader's not supporting me, or they're not behaving in a way that is conducive to the project, or it's a very harsh feedback that I received from my leader. So we get all of these different points and we go, oh, I wish he was a different leader, or she was a more inspirational leader, or he was more looking forward to spend time with the team, and all of these feedbacks that necessary, like, we all have ideas of what leadership should be. And then we don't necessarily feel empowered enough to put those in place. And I think with your teachings, you do exactly that. You empower people to be the leaders that they need to be.
Well, I hope so. I certainly try to. I try to help people be comfortable with the idea that authentic, well-intentioned leaders get very far. You know, people
Yeah.
do ask me, and I've recently had some posts and discussions about political leaders and manipulative leaders. There
Mm.
definitely are leaders
Yeah.
who are uh, unethical and manipulative, and are just sort of trying to, you know, their employees are only useful to them insofar as it helps them.
Yeah.
Um, so those leaders are out there. Uh, I'm happy to say I find they're in a minority, but they definitely exist, and I've definitely been hurt by them at different earlier times in my career.
Mm.
Um, and so I try to create or inspire other people, because one thing I point out, for example, is before you become a manager, you should think about like the worst manager you've had and ask, how am I going to become skilled enough not to do
Mm.
that?
Yes.
Because I made some really bad early leadership mistakes. You know, I
Yes.
did hurt people, and um
Yes.
those things were ignorance, not intention, but it
Yes.
doesn't change necessarily the experience for the person who sort of, you know, I'm sort of bumbling around in the dark, as it were, because
Yeah.
you know, you're not trained as a manager, you're trained as whatever it is, a marketer, a lawyer,
As an
an
expert.
artist, or an
Right.
engineer, and then you
Yeah.
become a manager, and then you find out the hard way. I often say, you know, managers learn using their team as guinea pigs, right?
Mm.
It's like test
Yeah.
subjects. And there's
Yes.
no ill intention in that. It's just that's the way our system is normally set up. So I try and help people do
Mm.
better.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And I resonate with what you said completely. I think in my past as well, I've recognized now looking back that I've hurt people, that I've said the wrong thing, that, I wasn't fair in meetings and all of this. And hindsight is great.
Yeah.
But also, I think one of the things that I want to talk to you about today is being part of transformational change, or being part of business change project that can be extremely stressful,
Mhm.
very high intensity, very quick. And leadership is focused on the outcome. They're not necessarily focused on the people. And a lot of the times, people would get very focused on what we need to do versus on the team or on the feel. What is your experience with business transformations, and are there opportunities in that stressful environment?
Yeah. So I'm definitely an optimist who feels that the best way to get something hard done is to get the team to want to do it.
Mm,
Um, which means that your highest productivity is often investing in the people.
yeah,
But that takes
yeah,
a lot of faith, because on any given day, investing in the people doesn't feel as directly like an action as working on the whatever the problem or the project is. And so taking time to talk to someone and inspire them, or bring a team together and take them to lunch, or any of those activities of um, investing in human caring and setting the tone and so on, can feel off topic. But
yeah.
I'm a big fan of, for example, Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start with Why.
Hmm.
And I think if people understand the why and the mission and the value, um, you know, people want to feel very successful at work. And so if you give them a path to say, yes, let's work hard on this project and work hard on
Yes.
this deliverable. And sure, the company will make a bunch of money, but we will have the satisfaction of seeing it done.
Mm,
And of seeing our work. I was lucky enough in working at Amazon to work on projects that got put into people's hands that you could show, sit down with your family or sit down with your friends and show them what you did. I personally,
that's
not
really
everyone is
awesome.
like me, but I personally chose to spend my career on consumer products. I worked
Mm,
one early job on a very back end system that was buried deep within telephone companies.
mm,
And I didn't like it because it was invisible. No one could see it work except a few technicians in the company. And for me, that wasn't satisfying.
Yeah.
So business transformation, I think, just to finish, as a leader, you have to help people feel like what they're doing has meaning. Now, is it going to have deep meaning like curing cancer? Probably not.
Yeah.
But it can still have meaning of we're going to help our customers do something that matters to them, even if that's watch a movie and get some entertainment. And that's worth doing.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you start with the outcome and get people excited on that journey. And also, I think to build on what you're saying, it's almost for each of those team members to understand what's in it for them. How will that support their journey and their growth within the company? So spending that time individually to go through that, I think it's of vital importance. And often we don't necessarily have that time because there's one project that's been kicked off, another project that's been kicked off, there's a number of initiatives that are now going on. If you're a project manager, you may be overlooking 2, 3, 4, 5 initiatives, and quickly the wheels are starting to spin. From your experience, like, obviously that's stressful, that's time consuming, and you may be focusing on just writing those reports and making sure that you've fed in the latest statistics or the latest data into the report, and you've touched point with the stakeholders. Where are the opportunities to highlight and to start building on your movement journey? So if you're a manager, if you're a part of that stressful team working on the outcome, should you be carving out a little bit of time each week reflecting on what you're doing? Or what is sort of the 1 or 2 things that you can say to people who are in that situation right now in order for them to bank on some of these opportunities?
Well, I do think carving out time is excellent, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But I think a technique that really worked for me was this idea that everything you do in the course of work is also a teaching moment. So if there's a meeting, you can take 2 minutes at the beginning or the end of the meeting, the end maybe, to say, was that meeting effective? What could we have done different or better? Or what should we copy? Was it great?
Yeah,
And what should we do the same? If you have a one-on-one with someone, you can spend, of course, part of it on status and problems and whatever, but a few minutes on them. If you're writing a report, you can ask, do we need this report? How could it be shorter? How could it be automated? Who else could do it? One thing that I think is really good about work is one person's repetitive task is another person's new challenge. In other words, if I've learned and mastered,
I love that.
Yeah, if I've learned and mastered something, maybe someone earlier in their career has never done it and would love to. And a leader does have to take some risk there in saying, well, you write the report for the executive, or you go to this meeting. And micromanagers struggle with that, because the idea is, if I send you and maybe you don't represent us well, then maybe people come and say, Ethan, why'd you send that person that didn't have the answer? But part of that is extending your credibility. Like, your freedom as a leader, your freedom comes through your team. And so I was always trying to develop a team that could kind of do my whole job, or maybe I should say do our whole job.
Yes.
Because if they couldn't do the whole job, I was going to drown.
Yes.
And so then, to your point about carving out time, where I always tried to carve out time was to sit back and ask myself, how am I doing building that team? Who can I invest in? Who can I pull up? Who wants to step up?
Yeah.
And I formed a lot of partnerships with people, meaning I would talk to people and say, look, you would like to be promoted or paid more, try this new skill. Well, you step up and do these things. and I will pave your way.
Yeah.
And, candidly, a lot of people worked very hard to capitalize on those opportunities. And I think that was win-win. I was certainly offering them executive support or leadership support, which they craved, and they were offering me their very best sort of highly dedicated efforts. And that was a fair trade. But that they were inspired to deliver, and I have to follow through. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and luckily,
So it's
I was able to follow through for people.
yeah. And in a way, it was a win-win situation for both of you. Now, unfortunately, not all situations are a win-win.
Sure.
Sometimes, as we spoke, leadership may not be interested in promoting that particular person, or they're not seeing what the achievements are. What would be some of the tips and tricks that someone who feels stuck or someone who feels unseen can do to get unstuck and get more time, more prime time with their leadership?
Yeah. So a few things. First, people who feel unseen often they're doing what I call work hard and hope to be noticed. Um,
Mm,
and I totally understand this. Um, because we're taught, like, in school, we're taught that you do the work, you turn in the homework, you get the grade,
yeah,
you get the marks. But in the real world, you kind of have to promote yourself some. You have to raise awareness, in part because maybe the person next to you is raising awareness of what they're doing. And then if you're not, you look left behind by comparison.
yeah,
So there are two ways to do this. One is, I'm sure there are many ways, two systematic ways. One is you can send a status report, but like copy a few people, not just your boss. You can just say, hey, this is what our team did this week, or this is what I did this week. This is my status report. And some people will read it, some people won't, but generally it's a way of raising awareness of what you've done. Now, if
yeah.
you're really uncomfortable with that, another way to do this is to send out notes praising your teammates. And you might say, well, how's that going to
Mm,
help you? But what you end up doing in this case is, I would send an email that said, well, this week, Christina and I had a big win. We built this marketing plan. And then, the next week I would send an email that said, well, Rajiv and I fixed this technical problem, and Rajiv
yeah,
did great work. And the point is, on any one email, I'm giving you credit, but in the totality of them, I'm talking about what you and I did, and then what Rajiv and I did, and then what Sarah and I did, and
mm,
Fred and I did, and eventually, who's the common element? It's me.
yeah. I love
Um,
it.
and and yet, no one will ever say, "Well, you shouldn't compliment Christina." Like, how full of
Yes.
yourself are you to talk about, what she accomplished? Whereas if I send an email, it's like, I did all this stuff this week. Some people might be like, settle down a little. Um,
Mm,
so
yeah.
that's a slightly sneaky way to
I
raise
call it
awareness.
subtle. I call it subtle.
Subtle, yeah, it's subtle.
Yeah, and very clever way of also praising your teammates.
And
because at the end of the day, none of us could achieve what we can achieve by ourselves. We all need help.
and I'm never talking about saying something that's not true. I'm talking about
Right.
legitimately praising people who deserve a nice
Right.
mention.
Yeah.
Um, Now that's raising awareness. The other way to get unstuck is I've asked this question of literally thousands of managers,
Mm,
which is, do you have worries? They all do. And how often do people offer to help you? How
yeah.
often does somebody on your team come and say, hey, what could I do that would help you out? What do you need?
Yeah.
And managers report that this happens rarely to never. And
Mm,
so, and therefore, if you go ask your manager, what can I do to help you? Um, you will automatically stand out to them. Even if you have
yeah.
maybe a manager who's not so supportive or whatever, most managers still appreciate help. And so when they tell you to do something, then when they say, well, I could really use help with this, you do have to do that thing. But even sort of the most selfish manager, or the one who's maybe they're not even selfish, they just don't naturally spend time helping people.
Yeah.
They will still be like, well, Christina helps me all the time, or helps me, and the other people don't. So who am I going to help? Right. When it comes, and this is just human nature, is
Yes.
we help people who help us.
Yes.
Now, if you're reasonably putting your own accomplishments, not overblowing them, but making sure they're noticed, and you're being reasonably helpful, proactively helpful to your manager,
yeah,
and you're still seeing nothing over time, the last step is, of course, you can ask directly, like, I want to move up, I want this or I want that. I would like to, could you help me? And if you get nothing, then it may be, if you have the option to, time to look for someone else. Or because there are plenty of leaders who got into leadership to be supportive.
yes.
They got into leadership because they wanted to accomplish things through their team.
Yeah.
And again, I have had some absolutely horrible managers. And when I say absolutely horrible, I'll share a story that I'm going to publish on LinkedIn in a couple weeks. One of my managers wasn't very good. And I and several other employees challenged him on a number of things. And he was so upset that we would challenge him that he slept with my wife in revenge. Like, he set out to seduce her. Now, and he was
Oh my
successful,
goodness.
and we ended up divorced. But like, when you talk about bad managers, there's a part that
that
most
is an
people can't
especially bad
imagine.
one that you got there.
Right. And he absolutely admits
Yeah.
that this was an intentional act of revenge.
Oh my goodness.
So there's no like debate about what happened. So when I say I've dealt with lousy managers, that's just
Yes.
one example.
You've
But
had
what I want to emphasize in sharing that short vignette, which I'll write more about another time, is managers such as that are still a minority in my overall career.
Yes. Thank
30%,
goodness.
they are a lot, 30% to 40%. That might be the most dramatic example.
Yeah.
But I've dealt with very poor managers.
Yeah.
That's maybe the epitome example, but you can go find the 60% that are better. And
Yes.
that's really the point,
Yeah.
is if you think you have a bad manager and that they're all bad, well, believe me, I can empathize with you what bad looks like.
Yeah.
But I also had very good. And so I have
Yes.
a number of managers who are still in my life that I'm lifelong friends with, that we built relationships.
Yeah.
And then I have the trail of tears with a few that weren't so good.
So yeah, I guess the moral of the story is be open, and don't necessarily just see what's immediately in front of you. Be open to other opportunities, and if you're feeling really stuck, then perhaps this is not the right culture or the right environment, and there may be something else out there with a much better fit and a much better manager / leadership. Thank you so much for all of you who are joining us live. Now, I also realized, because of the time zones and the global community that we have on LinkedIn, a bunch of you will be watching this recorded. If you are watching this recording and you have any questions or challenges or anything that you'd like highlighted, please put it in the comments. We will come back to you. Ethan and I will go through the comments and make sure all of the questions are answered. Now, I wanted to give a quick shout out to a couple of people who put comments in and say, LinkedIn user, hello from Seattle. Hello, Seattle. So lovely to have you here. We also have someone from Michigan, and they're looking forward to learning from Ethan. And we have a question from Alexandra B. I'll just pop that on the screen. And let you read it, Ethan, and throw it to your court. So people tend to interchange manager, supervisor, leader. Curious if you have thoughts on how these roles are actually different.
Absolutely. So they do get used interchangeably. Some people would say supervisor maybe is the most tactical title, leader is the most strategic. But definitionally, the best definition I have seen is managers work in the system and leaders work on the system. So
Mm,
a manager, there's some system set up. And by the way, most actual people, no matter what their title is, manager, senior manager, director, etc., they're doing a blend of these functions. But when
yeah.
you're managing, you're working within a system. And so let's take a system like compensation. So somebody
Yes.
has some role has a compensation range, and the manager has the job of assessing how are you doing against the role
Yeah.
you're in, and
Yeah.
where are you in the compensation range when it comes time to adjust compensation. And so they're determining within that system, well, how much of our raised budget should go to you versus someone else? And so they're working within the system. A
Yeah.
leader, someone operating a leadership role would be asking, is our compensation system designed right? Should we have more of the money going into benefits, or should we be focusing on paying people salary and letting them choose what to do? Do we have the right levels? They would be looking at the system to say, how should we do it? Because, for example,
Mm,
to look at big tech companies, which I know well, Amazon only has about half a dozen different leader or different levels between new college grad and basically CEO. It's a
right.
very few levels.
Yeah.
Microsoft, as a contrast, has quite a few. And
Mm,
I'm not at this point saying one is better than the other, but a leader would ask, is our level structure supporting the growth and acknowledgement of our people in the right way? And do
mm.
we need fewer levels because it's simpler, or do we need more levels because it allows more variation and gradation? That's just one example.
Yeah.
Again, managers would work on, we have a set of dates and we have a project goal, and like what's blocking us from executing the project. Leaders would ask more, where does the project fit into the strategy?
Yeah.
And how are we equipping our teams to be able to execute our strategy? Do we
Mm.
have the right organizational structure? So those are
Yeah.
the main differences as
Yeah.
I see them. I don't,
Yeah.
the supervisor title doesn't get used as much, but supervisor is often much more tactical. Like, did you show up for work? Are you putting in the hours?
Yeah.
Kind of like managing the basics of, are you present and are you working?
Yeah, supervisor tends to be more operational focused. So, if you're delivering a product or a service, are we doing everything that we need to be doing to be satisfying our customers? Um, and I think between the manager and the leader, I think it also depends whether you're in a sort of a project environment or whether you're in a business as usual delivering a service or a product environment. So again, the manager and the supervisor can be both a little bit operational focused, but if you're more in a project environment, the manager's much more focused on the outcomes of what we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
And then the leader, I completely agree with you. Irrespective of what context you are, they're kind of looking out on the strategic outcome and are we set up for success? Do we have the right people? Do we have the right skills? Do we have the right stakeholders and endorsements in place to get to the outcome that we need to get to?
Yeah. In theory, a manager can deliver the wrong project on time and feel successful. I was given this
Yeah.
thing to do. I did it. It shipped on time as described. The fact no one bought it is not my issue. I am victorious. The leader would look and say, well, that was a complete failure of leadership because we spent all this
Mm,
effort
yeah.
and no one wanted it. Conversely,
Yeah.
the leader might say, well, this project was very late and over budget and, has all these problems, but in the end,
Mm,
customers loved it. And so while we can improve on it, it counts as a victory because
mm.
it helped the business.
Yes.
And I think
Yeah.
a huge step for me was when I shifted from evaluating myself based on did I build as an engineer what I was asked to
Yes.
what should I be building?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Having a bit more of a forward focused perspective and outcome driven versus this is the job that I'm just doing and I don't necessarily know what it builds towards or what is the bigger challenge that we're trying to solve for our customers. Yeah, so I really I like that giving people the idea, the perception, the feel that they're part of something bigger. And I think if the leadership is not giving you that, then by all means, you need to start doing that for yourselves. Find out if you guys are, whoever's dialed into this and listening to this, just, from my experience, it's been always try to understand what the bigger outcome is. And how you are contributing to the results that the company, the project is trying to pursue, and then do all the things that Ethan was saying earlier. So if you're feeling like people are not seeing all of the achievements, send those emails. If you're feeling like you're not building the relationships with the leaders, make sure you spend the time with the leadership and spend those precious time with them. So offer your services, offer your help. Now, if you've just joined us or you are joining us, hello, this is awesome to have you here. I'm speaking to Ethan Evans. Ethan is an ex-Amazon VP who's now retired and is an executive coach. He's training and teaching people how to move on from manager to an executive and become unstuck and become the inspirational leader that we all want to be. In this part of the conversation, Ethan, I wanted to focus on something called transformational leadership, or rather, how do we become the leader that we aspire to have? Rather than waiting for that leader to change, we ourselves will be leaders one day, if not we're leaders already, to maybe someone who's more junior to us, or, we're all leaders in our own right. Maybe there's a community service that we're doing, or we're doing something at lunch and learn during breaks, all of the activities that we could be getting exposed to and active in. What are some of the things that we could be doing to set the stones to become the leader that we want to be?
Yeah, I think two big places to start down that path. Working on your emotional intelligence, working on, we're mostly trained early in our careers in what are classically called hard skills. So whether that's finance and accounting, or medicine, if we're a doctor, whatever it is, we're trained in sort of how to accomplish a task. And I think to move towards leadership, one thing is who do you lead? Well, if you're leading anybody but yourself, it's other people. And so working on the skills to relate with them, to communicate to them, to build empathy, to explain, that's a huge suite of skills. And I think a lot of pleasure can come out of that. Whether or not you ever go into personnel management, being at ease and competent, getting your point across to people will help you in your own career, as well as helping you in a leadership career. The second thing I think is really thinking deeply about, if you step up into any type of leadership, which again doesn't have to mean managing people, it can mean you're the most senior expert and you're setting direction in your particular fields. You're setting the design or the artistic style or any number of things that might be relevant to the hiring process. You might be influencing any of these decisions. I think the other place where you can start is, what sort of values do you want to bring to that and how can you do it? Many people get into leadership in reaction to something bad they see of, well, I need to fix this problem, or I never want to be a leader like that. It's a little bit like many parents. Part of their parenting is, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to be like my mom, my dad, my aunt, my grandpa, whatever. And that's okay. But then it's a question of, well, how are you going to do that? What is it exactly you're going, what you're not going to do is only a partial picture. What are you going to do? And so I think those are two big areas. You'll never be, as a leader, you'll never have enough influence, enough of what's called executive presence, and of course, enough strategic clarity. We all wish as leaders we had crystal balls where we could make only right decisions. That would be fantastic. But what you can do a little bit is practice your decision making. Here in the US, referring to American football, we talk about something called being an armchair quarterback, which means sitting and deciding what plays you would have called if you were in charge. Well, you can do that a little bit as you're learning to lead. You can look at what your leader is choosing, and you don't have to be a jerk about it. You can just say, well, I would do that differently. And then you can look at how things evolve. And you might learn that what you would have done wouldn't have worked. And you might learn that it would have worked. For example, all of us are still very familiar with COVID. I made some right predictions about COVID and some wrong ones. Early on, I predicted we were going to be sent home and be home for a while. And I actually prepared my team. I could see it coming and told them, like, we better get ready to go home for a while. But I underestimated for sure the duration. And something I underestimated as a specific example that I can now learn from, when I hear the word vaccine, I think of something that makes you immune to that thing forever. So like a measles vaccine, you get it once as a child and you'll never have, or polio, you get it once as a child and you'll never have this disease. I misunderstood that with COVID, vaccine meant sort of like flu vaccine, like, well, it'll make it suck less for a little while when you get sick, but it won't actually. So as a result, I thought when vaccines came out, like it would all be over, like, oh, disease eradicated, So I misunderstood. So that's an example where I made some right decisions, but I also made some wrong ones. And I can go back and say, well, how did I screw that up? Like, what didn't I understand? How can I do better next time? So this is sort of how you can practice your judgment.
Yeah, I love that. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm battling
COVID.
flu
Now
as we're talking about COVID.
Yeah.
Now, I know what you were talking about. Most of us getting into leadership because, I'm sorry.
This is my power, everyone, right here.
This is what talking about an illness, and I already feel it. Trying to fix being a bad leader. And I wanted to highlight the fact that you do dedicated cohort-based trainings to teach people along that journey and to show them some of the frameworks, excuse me, and some of the tips and tricks that you've learned during all of that experience that you've had at Amazon. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about that? Your Maven courses, you have a newsletter community. If people wanted to follow you, where is the best place to get hold of you and to get in touch?
Yeah. So, of course, most people here are on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn and from there kind of find everything. But my signature course is a course called Stuck at Senior Manager, Breaking Through to Executive. And whether you feel you're a senior manager and you're stuck exactly there, or you're stuck somewhere else in a leadership career, I kind of have found my niche trying to get people unstuck, which we talked about a little already, and helping them break through to the next level. And so I teach a course that many people have really enjoyed. It's rated very well on a platform called Maven. And so you can find it at www.maven.com/Ethan-Evans. And
I've just put the link underneath so people will be able to find it.
Yeah. And then for sort of more frequent than this quarterly live course, I do have a newsletter that comes out a couple times a week. There are a lot of newsletters in the world, so it's got a really long URL, Level Up with Ethan Evans, .substack.com. But that's my newsletter that goes into more depth, where I write at length. At the beginning of our talk, you were talking about how I write a lot. I am a very quick writer. And so, and I have a lot of passion about these topics. So I guess the words spool off, but you can get a lot of advice there. And the nice thing about the newsletter is it has an archive. So
yeah, fantastic.
If what I've written this week isn't what you need, you can go back through, at this point, almost a full year of newsletters to find where I've addressed your problem. Because at this point, I've probably written something on most career problems. Maybe not exactly your issue today precisely, but I've probably touched on it. It's there.
Yeah, fantastic. And if you want to follow Ethan on LinkedIn or connect with him on LinkedIn, please do so. You'll be able to find him super easily. As I said, he writes every day. I think you write every day.
Days. I
almost
don't
every day.
slavishly do every single day. But
and I find your posts are so worthwhile. They are, full of content, full of ideas, full of things to try. And it's definitely not one of the AI generated posts that most of us in Australia with.
I don't use any AI. I've played around a little bit to see what's possible, but at this point, my posts contain nothing that's AI generated. What I would say, my signature is, because I don't work for any company, I am free to write what I see to be the objective truth. I don't have an HR department or a legal department or PR department or a boss looking over my shoulder saying, you can't say that.
Yeah.
And so I try to talk about the truth as I see it. Your truth may differ, your experience may differ, but I will at least be giving you my unfiltered perspective. And that's what resonates with a lot of people. Is some people have said, oh, you say the quiet part out loud. And without trying to offend anyone, I do try to do that.
Yeah. And I think we need more of that, because a lot of us are thinking it and not a lot of us are saying it. So thank you for stepping into that space and making it more visible to everyone. Thank you so much. We are at the top of our time, and I really appreciate you coming and spending this time with us here on the live chat, on the live broadcast. If you guys are joining or have just joined and have just caught the end of this broadcast and you've realized it's now recorded because the time has passed, please make sure, if you've got any questions, challenges, or things you wanted to highlight, put them in the chat and both Ethan and I will come back. It's been a real pleasure, Ethan. Thank you so much. Good luck with the next cohort of your course, because they get busy and booked up. And I know it's always a lot of fun getting lots of different people from lots of different walks of the career path. So
that's a lot of the value of the class, is all the different perspectives that are there. We do a lot in the class to try to facilitate people getting to know each other, getting advice from each other, getting input, which we think really strengthens the learning experience, which is why we do live classes.
Yeah. And I suppose having build those relationships as part of the class and those sharings makes it a lot more as a wholesome experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Well, Christina,
Awesome.
thank you so much for having me, and for everybody here, thank you for listening.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you very soon in the LinkedIn Live broadcast world.
Right.
Take care.
Cheers.